Our blanks are back from the miter saw. There's one more step that we need to take care of before we start drilling these blanks out. This is a standard 7mm brass tube that comes with the slimline pin kit. If I hold this up to our queen, you'll notice it's about 1/4 of an inch longer than the queen. If we hold it up to the king, it's not longer than the king, but you'll notice about 1/4 of an inch from the end of the brass tube, that's where the king's crown slims down. And what I've learned from experience is if I don't trim this tube off and make it about 1/4 of an inch shorter, that the tube ends up right at the edge of his crown, and the tip of the crown will pop off of the king's head. So what we're going to do is we're going to back off about 1/4 of an inch. Now you might worry about that and say, well, doesn't that affect the pin kit? I have done some measurements, and what happens on the back of your pin kit, we'll pull this one apart. We'll take our ring off. With the ink fully retracted inside of the pin, you'll notice that right at 1/4 of an inch is about where the edge of the ink refill hits. So it's not going to hurt us to remove 1/4 of an inch from our brass tube. I've taken 1/4 of an inch off the end of our tube, and I've filed down the tube to get any burrs off of it with just a little file. I used a scroll saw with a metal blade. You could use a pipe cutter, that would work. Whatever means you have, you could even basically put this to a sander, a drum sander, and sand down that 1/4 of an inch. I've taken my 7mm drill bit, and you'll notice I've put a little blue painter's tape on there. That painter's tape is to produce a stop so that I know how far into my top pieces I need to drill. So let's get set up and we'll drill out our blanks. The drilling process is fairly straightforward. Hold your blank securely in some sort of a vise and drill down the center of the blank until you reach the stop that we set on our drill bit. Before you drill your blank, always verify that you're drilling the end of the blank with the perpendicular line. That way, when we reassemble our pin top and pin bottom, the grain should line up. As you're drilling, be sure to retract the bit from time to time and clear the chips. Ready for the glue up, and the first thing we want to do is take our brass tubes and we want to rough them up with a little bit of sandpaper. This allows the glue to stick a little better to the tubes when we glue them inside of the wood blanks. I like to use Gorilla Glue to glue my brass tubes into my wood blanks. CA glue will work just as well. There are many options, and choose the one that works the best for you and your shop. Now with Gorilla Glue, you need to dampen the inside of your blank before you insert the tube. So I like to use a Q-tip, a little bit of water, and just swab the inside of both of my blanks. You want to use a liberal amount of glue. It's better to use too much glue than not enough. And when I look at my brass tube, you can see where I cut the tube. It's rough on this end versus the smooth or natural end of the tube as it came from the manufacturer. I like to insert the rough end inside of the blank so that way I don't have any issues with the transmission of the pin when I go to insert it into the tube. A lot of glue. I start to insert it into the hole. of the blank, and I just sort of rotate it and pull it in and out a little bit to get the glue spread as evenly as possible. And when it gets close, you don't want to get it all over your fingers. You can just use an insertion tool and make sure the blank, or I'm sorry, the brass tube is below the surface of your blank. Okay. Once again, I'm finding the rough end that I cut from. Get a liberal amount of glue on here. And spread the glue as evenly as possible. Now, give the glue a little time to dry, and we can start turning.